Virtually every homeowner who's ever been sued in a real estate transaction started with this belief. It won't happen to me because I'm honest. I'm not hiding anything. And besides, only the crooks get sued. Well, I've got bad news for you. The majority of real estate lawsuits, they have nothing to do with dishonest homeowners hiding defects. They're more like well-meaning homeowners who step on these hidden legal landmines based on what they wrote on a piece of paper or said during a showing. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 of the most common words and phrases that have cost honest sellers hundreds of thousands of dollars in judgments. And to help keep you safe, I created a system that's going to protect you from all of them. I call it FACTS, F-A-C-T-S, features, accuracy, clarity, timestamp, and scope. And here's what this means. Describe features, not opinions. Stay accurate. Only claim what you can prove. Make sure you be clear about what you mean. Include dates, and define the scope of what was actually done. Every lawsuit I'm about to show you, it only happened because a seller violated one of these 5 core principles. So let's start with landmine number 1, friendly fire. And this one shocks most people. In an attempt to be friendly and help some people understand the nature of your home, you might write in your listing description, hey, this home is perfect for families, or hey, this is a great starter home for young couples. Congratulations, you just violated the Fair Housing Act. According to the Housing and Urban Development Enforcement data, sellers who use familial status language in advertising face settlements that are typically ranging from $15,000 to $50,000. Plus, they have to undergo mandatory fair housing training. These cases happen more often than you'd think, and they're not just going after slumlords. I mean, they're going after regular homeowners who just thought they were being helpful. And here's what makes it even more painful. You could be held liable even if the person who complained never even made an offer on your home. They don't have to prove that they were harmed financially. They just have to prove that you violated the Fair Housing Act in your advertising. I remember when I first heard about cases like this, I was actually kind of mad. I thought, wait a second, this is the United States. I have First Amendment rights. I could say whatever I want. Turns out, not in commerce you can't. The Fair Housing Act applies to private real estate transactions. So when you're advertising a product, the government regulates that advertising to prevent discrimination. So your free speech argument, it dies in court every single time. Now, what rule did we violate? Well, it was the features. In fact, when you describe an ideal buyer instead of property features, you're stepping into discrimination territory and you're not talking about the facts of the home. So here's what you should say instead. This home features a fenced backyard and 4 bedrooms, or it has an open floor plan with an updated kitchen. See, this helps you convey the same value without necessarily profiling a specific buyer. You're describing the features of the home, and the features themselves, they can't discriminate. Landmine number 2 feels just as harmless, and I call it the I'm proud of my neighborhood problem. You state that the home is in a very safe neighborhood because you want buyers to know that you just love living there. Legally, well, you just implied that other neighborhoods aren't safe, and in their infinite wisdom, court and HUD have ruled that safe neighborhood is code language for racial or economic discrimination. HUD has brought enforcement actions against sellers for using phrases like safe area or exclusive community, or describing neighborhoods in ways that they say suggest demographic preferences. So settlements in these cases typically range from $10,000 to $35,000. Now, this violates 2 parts of FACTS, features and accuracy, because safe is an opinion. It's not a measurable feature, and it's also not accurate because you can't substantiate it with data. So the fix here is describe geography, not demographics. Say, we're located on a cul-de-sac with very low traffic, or it's a quiet street with minimal traffic. This allows you to communicate value to the buyers that you're trying to reach, but you're doing it with provable facts. Landmine number 3 is where honest mistakes get really expensive. It's called the partial truth problem. So let's say you hired a roofer and they put on new shingles. Well, you write in your listing, brand new roof, 2025. The buyer moves in, and then 6 months later, they discover that the roof decking is rotted. Well, now they're saying, hey, you told me this is a brand new roof. And you say, well, when I said new roof, I meant new shingles. And the buyer says, you said new roof. I interpreted that as structurally sound roof system. That creates reasonable buyer expectations about the entire roofing system, opening the door for buyers to sue you for misrepresentation. Now, this violates the clarity and scope part of FACTS. New roof is vague. What does new mean anyway? The shingles, the decking, the flashing, or is it the entire system? When you don't define the scope, the buyer defines it for you, and the court tends to side with the buyer's reasonable interpretation. So here's what you need to write instead. New architectural shingles installed in 2025 by ABC Roofing. That's it. It's a clear, well-scoped statement of fact. And since you only did part of the system, say what you did. And that precision is going to protect you in the long run. Let's say that you spent 2 years breaking your back in your wallet to fix up the house. You put in new floors, a new paint, updated the half bath, and you're really proud of all the work you did. So in the listing, you write completely renovated, move-in ready. Well, now you can add lawsuit to your renovation budget because you just stepped on landmine number 4. This is the DIY disaster. See, the buyer's home inspector, they're going to find out that you didn't pull permits for the electrical work or the bathroom remodel. Well, now the buyer has a problem because if they ever want to sell the home, they're going to have to disclose that there's unpermitted work. And that can significantly reduce the home's value and create liability for them. So then they sue you. And in many jurisdictions, they win. Now, there was a landmark California case called Easton versus Strasburger. And this established that sellers have a duty to disclose material facts affecting property value. And while that case happened to deal with soil conditions, the principle has been applied to unpermitted work. So when you say completely renovated, but the work wasn't permitted, you've misrepresented the condition and potentially created future liability for the buyer. This violates scope and accuracy. Completely renovated is a blanket statement. It suggests everything was done properly and legally, but you didn't define the scope. And if the work wasn't permitted, you can't back up the accuracy. So what should you have said instead? Updated kitchen and half bath in 2022, refinished hardwood floors throughout. Describe what was done without making absolute claims. And if you did pull permits, then just say so. Kitchen remodel completed in 2022, all permits obtained and inspections passed. That is scoped and that's accurate. Now, landmine number 5, this is the amnesia defense. This stems from the checkbox on the disclosure form that absolutely ruins lives. See, you're filling out the seller's property disclosure statement, and there's a line that says, are there any known material defects? Well, you hurriedly check no. But here's the trap. You had a foundation crack 3 years ago, and as a conscientious homeowner, you want it fixed. And you think, well, it's fixed, so it's not an issue anymore, right? Wrong. You still have to disclose it. The Pennsylvania case, Shapiro versus Who, involved a seller who checked no known defects on the disclosure form. Well, the buyer later discovered evidence of a prior foundation issue that had been repaired and concealed. The seller argued that they didn't think it was a current issue because it had been fixed, but the court, well, they ruled that known defects means defects that you were ever aware of, not just current problems. So the buyer has a right to know the history of the property even if issues were repaired. In that case, the seller was found liable for misrepresentation. This violates accuracy and timestamp because you weren't accurate. This violates accuracy and timestamp because the seller wasn't accurate about what known meant legally, and they didn't timestamp the issue in the repair. See, the rule here is if you fix something significant, disclose both the problem and the fix. Right, foundation crack in southeast corner repaired in 2021 by XYZ Foundation Repair. Engineers report available, no issue since. That's accurate. That's timestamped. And now you're protected because you told the truth. And landmine number 6 is the marketing hype bomb. What you like to call enthusiastic marketing language, the court sees as a warranty about functionality. So when you list the house as move-in ready or perfect condition, and 2 weeks after the buyer moves in, the air conditioning fails, they call you and you say, hey, it was working fine when I left. And they said, you told me it was move-in ready. That means everything works. Well, who's right? And in multiple jurisdictions, courts have ruled phrases like move-in ready and turnkey and perfect condition, well, they create implied warranties so that when major systems fail shortly after closing, buyers have actually successfully argued that the seller's language created reasonable expectation that everything was going to work perfectly, I guess indefinitely. This violates clarity and accuracy. Move-in ready is really vague, and perfect condition is an opinion. Neither one is a measurable proven fact, so what should you say instead? Well, nothing. You don't need to editorialize. Just list the facts. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with central air and gas heat. If something was recently serviced, state it with a timestamp. HVAC serviced October of 2026 by ABC Heating and Cooling. That's it. Landmine number 7 is the as-is illusion, and this is the most dangerous misconception, especially in for sale by owner selling. See, sellers think that if they write sold as is in the contract, they're bulletproof. They think it means I don't have to tell you anything. It does not mean that. As is only protects you from unknown defects. It does not protect you from fraud or concealment. How do I know? Well, because of the landmark New Jersey case, Weintraub versus Kobach. They established this principle clearly. You see, in this case, the seller knew that the property had serious septic system problems, and they didn't disclose the issue. They included an as-is clause in the contract, sure, thinking it protected them, but it didn't. The buyer discovered the septic problems, and after after closing, they sued the sellers. This went all the way, by the way, to the New Jersey Supreme Court, and ultimately they ruled that the as-is clause does not permit a seller to actively conceal defects or remain silent about known material defects. So in other words, you can't contract away your duty to disclose known problems. This violates the A principle in facts, accuracy. You always have to tell the truth. If you're selling as is, fill out every line of that disclosure form. If anything is broken or has broken to your knowledge, state it clearly, including anything you know about the repair. And if you're not sure about something, write unknown, recommend buyer inspection, because transparency with an as-is clause is always your friend. And what's mind-blowing to me is how few people realize that there are legal strategies that won't even cost you a dime, but they can keep you out of court, which is why in this video right here, I walk you through my 5 favorite legal protections that nobody tells you about. So go check it out and let's keep you legally safe. We'll see you there.